there are many different forms of activism, especially animal rights activism that are effective and that reach people in different ways. So your last caller saying this won't reach anyone simply isn't true. I know lots of vegans that have all reached veganism by different forms of activism that have reached them personally, and that could be anything from health, or it could be the majority is a compassion for animals and the fact that they don't want to see animals harmed or exploited or used in any way. So she's wrong.
What sort of demos have you taken part in, Calvin?
So I've done, we've gone to the RSPCA Assured building, shouted on the megaphone there. I've done outreach in the street where I've offered people vegan food. And I've also been involved in direct action. I was with Doug where we went inside a slaughterhouse and stood on top of a gas chamber. We were arrested for that and we are actually facing prison sentence for doing that. So
we better not talk too much about that then, just in case it finds its way to an upper court. How do you know if a protest has been successful, Calvin?
I think we, by talking to individuals, I've been at protests, the RSPCA Assured one, where we were on the megaphone and we were playing the sounds of pigs screaming inside gas chambers. And we were talking to people on the street who weren't aware that this goes on. Most people don't realise that pigs are gassed inside gas chambers. And this leads to a conversation when we talk about animals being used and being exploited. And they go away with that information in their hands if we're given a leaflet, or they make a commitment then and there to stop exploiting animals and being part of that. And they agree to go vegan and live a vegan lifestyle.
Okay. Is it right to go into a supermarket?
Yeah, I think so. I think most consumers, when they're confronted with the image of, lambs being slaughtered, anywhere from 6 weeks old over the Easter weekend, and they see that, they might make the compassionate choice to not eat that animal and decide to get a plant-based option. And I think most people, if this was outside, they would just walk with their head down. They would ignore the protest that's going on. And inside, when they are going to buy their lamb, by the way, no one stopped them buying that food. They were able to buy it, but they were confronted with that reality.
I mean, I wasn't there, and you'll know better than I, but the picture that I've seen, someone does appear to be standing in front of the cabinet, so it's rather difficult to open the door to get to the lamb.
We will stand in front of it, but we will never stop people picking up that lamb. And we're not talking about them.
Isn't it? Do you think?
I mean, it's not. I mean, you just say excuse me, and then we move out the way. In these sort of protests, we never actually physically stop anyone. But
and
the
supermarket doesn't. No, I'm absolutely not condoning that. That's
okay.
That. I mean, you just don't behave in that fashion, and it's almost like a form of assault on that young woman. It's not appropriate.
It is assault. Yeah.
No, we're on the same level. And the supermarkets allow you to stay there, do they?
They will ask us to leave, and then you have your right to protest, so you can stay for as long as until the police ask you to leave. They're the only ones with the powers to do so, right. And then you might face an arrest if you then continue. It might become from trespass to aggravated trespass, essentially.
Right, and lastly, you think that's appropriate for police time to be used on that, to get you and your colleagues out of a Sainsbury's or Asda or Waitrose?
I don't think it is. I've been in protests where maybe a police liaison officer comes down and says, how long do you plan on being here? Okay, we'll stay. One individual officer might stay there while the protest is going on to make sure that the actual protesters are safe. And then they will leave when they decide that there's no threat to anyone's safety. So I do think it's a waste of time for police to attend when there's no threats of violence, unless someone does get violent like this individual.
How are Ukrainian people in general processing? I mean, is it public opinion that the US, that Donald Trump is abandoning them? I mean, would you hear people in Ukraine at the moment arguing or suggesting or explaining that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are now allies, and Zelensky is the one that's been cast out into the cold by both of them?
Very much so. That sense is very much pervasive. It's everywhere. There's a where I often go for a coffee is the Art Students Cafe at the Art University around the corner. If you walk in there, on the board, you've got the list of coffees. Yeah. Americano has been crossed out.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Obviously, these are our students. They're students. They're rebellious. They have a sense of what's going on. Obviously, they might find the odd exception, but by and large, this is very much the sense. And it does touch on something else, actually, just on that awful piece, this proposal that has been put forward. It also demonstrates such an abject lack of understanding of history and of current events and current affairs. And one of the many points that comes out for me is, one of the great ironies is the MAGA crowd, Trump, Vance, they've liked to push this propaganda, this Kremlin propaganda line that Zelensky is somehow some form of dictator. And here's the great irony, because precisely because he's not the thing that they say he is, it makes this peace proposal worthless. Because if you take, for example, things like the recognition of Crimea as Russia, it's Zelensky that won't do this, he's causing problems. Zelensky cannot do this because he's not a dictator. He has to put this before the Ukrainian parliament, and the Ukrainian constitution will have to be rewritten. Zelensky can't accept this deal. It has to be accepted by the Ukrainian people, and possibly, I may be wrong, someone would need to correct me, possibly by even a series of referenda. So the man just can't sign away huge tracts of Ukrainian territory or sign these deals precisely because he isn't the dictator that they claim he is.
I hadn't clocked that, but of course you make perfect sense, and God save us all from referendums. I guess the bit missing from what you said is just even if he wanted to, because he clearly doesn't, but even if he did, he couldn't because of the constitutional requirements that you have outlined.
It's the same as to think about martial law. I think about 2 weeks ago we had the most recent vote on martial law. Zelensky doesn't impose martial law that prevents elections. It's imposed by the Ukrainian parliament. And last time, I think the numbers were 360 to 1, 360 for the imposition of martial law, 1 against. And those 360 votes for are made up of even some pro-Russian candidates, even some opposition parties, some people who absolutely detest Zelensky, people who stood against him in previous elections joking that the guy's just a comedian, are voting for the imposition of martial law. This is not something that Zelensky can just arbitrarily sign away, precisely because he's not the dictator that the Russians, ergo, then Trump and Vance claim he is.
That's such a brilliant point. And it also explains why they use the rhetorical dishonesty of claiming that he doesn't want elections and he won't have elections. It is that mad historical paradigm of accusing them of what you actually are, accusing Zelensky of being what Putin actually is, but Zelensky demonstrably isn't. Could you imagine if Putin was subject to actual proper democracy? It would be the world would be an entirely different place. Never mind Russia, but there they are accusing Zelensky of all the things that they're guilty of themselves. And I hesitate to ask this question, Lee, but what is the big hope where you are at the moment? What is? If you could somehow coalesce public feeling, whether it's the members of parliament that you've just described, or the broader population, or the people that you have personal interactions with, what's the big hope? What would be the thing that they mention in their prayers? As in something that could actually happen, as opposed to a divine intervention?
It's such a difficult one to answer, James, because it's such a broad spectrum of people, and it's such a big country with people with different interests, different areas.
But if we were to see the continuing resistance and putative defeat of Putin, it has to be a sort of vague assembly of European action and intervention, doesn't it? That's their only hope.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it comes back to sort of what I sort of started with, is it has to come back to there has to be some sense of justice, some sense that Russia hasn't just won here and been handed a victory.
And that's why this appeasement deal is so obnoxious, because it does precisely the opposite of deliver justice to the Ukrainian people.
And also, this sense of security guarantees has to be there, because otherwise, as so many Ukrainians have said, Kira Radic, who often appears on British British TV and radio, Kira often says, we're fighting this war so that our children don't have to. And as much as they want the killing to stop now, if it means they have to keep fighting so that their children aren't fighting this war in 5-10 years' time, then that's where they are. So any deal has to have cast iron security guarantees, whoever that comes from, whoever delivers that. But clearly the American word is worthless.
And it's worth mentioning that Kira is a leader of one of the opposition parties that you mentioned, and yet on all of these issues, foursquare behind Volodymyr Zelensky. If people want to find out a little more about the work that you're doing at the moment, Lee, in Ukraine, in Lviv, what can they do?
Thank you, James. It's very kind. We're on X as Fierce Calm, and we're on. We have a website as Fierce Calm. That's fierce as in angry, and calm as in calm. Can find us there. on our website or on social media, on Instagram as well, and you can see the work that we do.
Good man.
With Ukrainian
offer some
veterans,
support.
amputees and children.
Next call is Richard from Birmingham, and I think he wants to refer to this. Reform UK's Richard Tice said that stupid net zero plans were partly to blame for the outage at Heathrow. Mr Miliband?
He'll make up any old sort of...
Baloney is the word I'm hoping you'll use.
Baloney is the word I was...
I was nervous to what word might come next, Mr Miliband.
Yeah, I was quite nervous, actually. Look, he'll make up any other old baloney. Just look, these people just want... Look, they're on an ideological extreme crusade against this clean energy transition, which is essential for energy security, essential for creating good jobs and growth. I've seen absolutely zero evidence of what Richard Tice is talking about, and I think it says more about Richard Tice than about what happened at Heathrow.
So the Richard to whom he refers is Richard Tice, who is the Deputy Leader of Reform UK and MP for Boston and Skegness, currently in Birmingham campaigning, I imagine, and joins me now. You want to have your say back to Mr Miliband, Richard. Go ahead, Mr Tice. Good morning.
Well, good morning. And obviously, I was listening to your show, as I regularly do, and was disappointed to hear Mr Miliband refer to me as talking baloney. Far from it.
This is your assertion that Heathrow outage was down to this net zero obsession. He says it's nonsense, Mr Tice.
What's actually happened is that they're embarrassed that I've called them out and I've spotted what has happened. Let me just take you to the 118-page Heathrow Sustainability Report 2024. It's all about how they get to net zero on the ground. They have a biomass heat and power plant. What they didn't want to do, which is what most other sensibly run airports around the world do, which is have complete operational resilience by having diesel-powered generators that can kick into action if they lose their grid supplies electricity. And because Heathrow has been driving towards net zero for a very long time, they didn't want to have that diesel generator on the ground. I've got that on very good authority.
Is that Heathrow? Is that Heathrow's decision, Mr Tice?
Yes, that is Heathrow's decision. That is Heathrow's decision.
Well, then why would you blame the government, Mr Tice?
No, I've never blamed the government for it. I mean, I've blamed the government for lots of things, but ultimately it was the Tories that imposed net zero on the nation, and it's the Heathrow directors who have essentially put their whole operation at risk, as it was recently exposed, because they didn't want to have a full-blown operational backup system. I've read their 63-page resilience report. Unbelievably, nowhere there does it imagine the scenario where the electricity from the grid is cut off. I mean, just grotesque negligence and over-focus on net stupid zero. So,
lastly, Mr Tice, when the report is published, and there may be interim findings within 7 to 14 days, what specifically will you be looking for? Richard Tice.
I'll be looking for clarity about why they didn't have the operational resilience that other major airports have around the world to ensure that they can keep going if they lose electricity from the main grid.
The flag of St George represents the blood of Jesus and the cross of Jesus. It was also prophet to Muhammad. It was a Jewish rabbi revered by Christianity. We can all embrace that flag. We can all embrace the seeds of liberalism England gave the world to do this. Habeas corpus judicially, Magna Carta politically, free press, what you're doing now, independent judiciary, trial by jury, all came out of England, and we produced the Anglosphere, all under that flag. We can all embrace it. The problem with Starmer, isn't it? He should fly the red flag of Marxism. He's very much in the hard left. Right. And what winds me up is he adopts my flag, even though he doesn't believe in Englishness. That's me wind up with him.
Let me read you this from Alan. What is this? This is a text from Alan Shaun. Starmer really can't read a room, can he? He can't read women, and now he can't read his fellow Englishmen. His time needs to be up. And that's broadly what you're saying. Is he doesn't have great political skills for a leading politician, does he?
No, because he was a Corbynista from the outset, Nick, very much to the hard left. Corbyn doesn't celebrate St George's Day today, neither does Starmer. He's just playing the field for votes. You're right about reform as a threat. Yeah. Reform's bearing down on him now. It's purely political. Don't believe a word of it.
Lastly, before I let you go, and for listeners who don't recall, you're an ex-military bloke, and we've talked about your military service in the past. I want to get a word from you, if I might. You don't have to comment, by the way, on a story we're doing later in the hour. It's on the front page of one of the newspapers this morning. Hundreds of Special Forces veterans face being unjustly hounded over incidents that occurred decades ago in Northern Ireland, according to serving and former elite troops. The government is in the and give me 1 second, John. The government is in the process of repealing an act that banned inquests and offered a conditional amnesty to those suspected of crimes relating to the Troubles, measures aimed at protecting former soldiers. They could now be banned.
Right.
Sure.
Here's a message for Keir Starmer on St George's Day. If you mean it, don't repeal that. Don't repeal it. Protect those men. They forfeited their lives for them to protect those seeds of liberalism we've just talked about. Behind that flag, you stand up for them men if you're a patriot, Starmer. Over to you.
I'm a publican and have been in this country as an Irishman since 1986. And I'm out of London now. I was in London for many years. I'm up in Norfolk. And today I put flags, buntings, inside, outside, George Cross flags and the Union Jack all over the pub to promote St George's Day in my pub. And I put on lovely cheese boards complimentary for my customers and friends because they come in St Patrick's Day, which is just gone on the 17th of March, and my pub was packed and they all support me. But I'm just trying to, to encourage the English people to come out and celebrate their day. And I listen to them all the time. As a publican, you get to meet so many people. And they tell you, and some of them are saying, it should be a bank holiday. This was the conversation today. And, that the government is not doing enough for the English people to promote this day. I done more today than, would you believe it, than any pub around, and I'm an Irishman.
Well, I never thought I would be playing Jerusalem to an Irishman.
No, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for that.
Do you regard yourself as adopted English?
Listen, I love this country. Iain, I absolutely love this country. My wife is English, and I'm very proud of this country. And I'm very proud of my English friends and my Scottish friends. And the people in today in my pub were shaking hands with me, thanking me for putting the flags up, thanking me for putting the bunting up. I'm getting all these thank yous for the last week because no other pub has put even the slightest flag or anything up to promote this day. I have done it for years, but today I went out of my way to really promote it this year. And complimentary cheese boards, but we're not just having a St George's Day, we're having a St George's week. And I've got music on the weekend, and we
can do, because of course the actual St George's Day this year is next Monday, it turns out.
That's correct, yes. I only found this out yesterday myself. But people did come out today, and I treated them to the lovely cheese board, beef. We've had everything on it, and there was strangers in my pub today, and they couldn't believe it. I says, "Oh, do you fancy a cheese board?" And you name it was on it, and people loved it, and they came out. It was just lovely to see them. My regulars, good customers, and good friends, and some strangers. And I just don't understand, Dean. I really don't understand why we don't celebrate this wonderful day more. And I'll just give you an example, Iain. I went to a deli in a certain shopping centre today to get some nice cheeses and beef. And when I got to the checkout, there was a lady serving me. She says, "You've got a lot of cheeses here," she says. I said, "I do, yes, and grapes and you name it." I said, "Well, it's St George's Day." She says, "Really?" Now, this is an English lady, mid-60s maybe, a lovely lady. And I says, "Do you not know that today is St George's Day?" She says, "No." And I just didn't get it, Iain. I says, "I can't believe that." And she says, "Really?" And I couldn't believe it. I was telling that story when I got back to my pub. But I've closed up now because everyone's gone home. But they did come out and celebrate today, and we're going to celebrate.
You've closed up at 5 to 10?
We closed up at 9:30 because it's been a long weekend with the bank holiday. And, people were in from 3:30 to about 8:30. Sort of thing,
Okay. Listen, I like to think I know Norfolk quite well, but I've never been to Denver. Where is it?
Have you heard of a place called Downham Market?
I know Downham Market, yes.
Well, Denver Village is literally 5 minutes drive just out the road from and it's a beautiful village. We have a beautiful church opposite us, hundreds of years old. I'm the only pub in the village, and we have quite a lot of people. I'll tell you one of our regulars, and I mean, I wouldn't say regular, but been in quite a few times, ex-Prime Minister Liz Truss.
Well, goodness me.